So we're going to talk about how to get an organizing job. I want to intro it by something that may be obvious to some of you, the job market. This is a tough time. Elections are usually, especially presidential elections, are the easiest time to get an organizing job and a really great opportunity to get experience and to grow your leadership. And many of you have done that. After the election, it's really unknown in terms of how funding is, what donors do, what political stuff happens, but there's always like an ebb and flow. So we're kind of in a period of time that it's more difficult to get an organizing job. Now, of course, there's all kinds of organizations that are year-round, such as unions and many community organizations. But it's a natural ebb and flow, but that's why it's actually really good that you all are here today, because everyone is going to need to up their game in order to get that opportunity. So that's the bad news. The good news is that organizing to get a job is really just a skill like anything else. That you get better with practice, with community, with support, with connections. And so I'm hoping to give you some tools to improve your skills and not waste your time, your limited time when you're focusing on getting a job. Base Building for Power. I think everybody here knows this. We're an international training organization, training union, community, election organizers in base building. And when we say base building, that's not talking to your base, it's growing your base, right? So all of the movements that we care about very dearly, whether it's criminal justice or tenants' rights or workers' rights or Palestine, are in a tough spot right now and need to grow. And so to grow, we need base building that actually gets more people into the movement. So while we do trainings, that's based on relational organizing. We're also a community of organizers that support each other to do the hard work of organizing. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and our website is there. What do you want and what are you open to? So the first thing I want to put out to you is for you to ask yourself this question. And you may not know, and that's okay too, but this should be something that guides what you're looking for. Are you looking for a full-time or part-time? Are you looking for remote or in person? Remote jobs are very hard to come by, but they exist. Are you open to moving somewhere? Or where are you open to moving? Anywhere in in the States, outside the States? I don't know. So it's important to know like what you're interested in and also like what your non-negotiables are, right? So, you may have kids in school and like getting up and going to a different state is not an option for you. Also, do you have a driver's license? Do you have access to a car? Those things are, part of some jobs. There's also, I would say, three kinds of organizing jobs. One is political. Again, we're coming out of political season, so there's not a whole lot of that. There's a couple of governor races coming up. There's a couple of Supreme Court races coming up. And there's some local, there's local races. So if you're into doing the political stuff, some people just jump around and like see what the next thing is and apply for it. There's union organizing. I really encourage anybody who's an organizer to try labor organizing, at least for a couple years. I think it's just a really important experience to have, and you may love it like I did, and I did it 15 years. And then there's community organizations, right, that are should be base building throughout the year and pushing our elected officials around the issues that we care about. The other thing about what do you want is that you can figure it out through interviewing. And my husband actually taught me this because he applies for a lot of jobs. And he uses the interview and the job process as a way to help him figure out what he likes and what he doesn't like, right? And so I really encourage you, even if even if the job that you're applying for, you're not 100% like, oh, this is amazing, it doesn't hurt other than time to apply. Then you can get a vibe of the people that are interviewing you. You could get practice interviews, and you can sort out like, oh, what speaks to me, what feels good. This may be the most important. So your personal network is your most likely way to get a job. And the bigger your personal network is, and the more people that you have that can vouch for you, that support you, that cheer you on. So you can consider Base Building for Power part of your personal network. Now, it's a tremendous network. Many of you know each other, and many of you know a lot of, Kim was just saying to me earlier, like, oh, how's this person who's in LA worried about the fires? And then starting to think of all the people that she now knows in LA that are part of the Base Building for Power network. And many of those people have connections to jobs, can support you. So Base Building for Power is one big part of the network. So when you think of your personal network, I would think of who are the people that support you and that are connected. And again, it could be people in the Base Building for Power network. It doesn't have to be people who are like, have been organizing for 10, 20 years. But you do know people, some of you know people who have, in your organization. Actually, I challenge you right now, just start to make a little list, right? Who do you know who are community leaders, who know you, like you, know a little bit about your work, people who you can call up and say, hey, I'm looking for jobs. I would love to just chat with you and like get a coffee. Having as many one-on-ones, like just networking one-on-ones. And in a networking one-on-one, I think the best thing is to just not have a specific, like it's not like, oh, I'm asking you for jobs, but like, asking people for advice, asking people for their ideas, having people check maybe your ideas and bounce things off of each other. I think the more kind of informal to set it up. I'll give you a secret. Some of you have heard this before, is asking somebody for their advice is one of the best ways to get a meeting. Now you should be genuine about it. And that's because, who doesn't like giving advice? So if somebody calls me and says, hey, Harley, I'm having this challenge about this thing, I really want your advice on something. On one hand, I want to help this person. I care about them. And I also feel good that they think that I can be helpful to them, right? So asking for somebody for coffee, go for a walk, just, as a networking meeting, it doesn't have to be complicated. And remember, like the busier that somebody is, the more that like, a text that you send is going to get buried between their texts, their emails, their socials, and everything like that. So I like to try to get on people's radar as much as possible. And it's so funny. Sometimes I'll ask somebody if they'll have a one-on-one to, if we could get coffee and chat. Because I'd love their advice about what we're going to do with Base Building for Power the next year. And then I won't hear back, or I'll hear back, like I'll check my schedule. And then like I'll post something on Facebook completely different, like something about me and my husband. And then I'll get a message back from that person, like, oh, I can schedule the meeting now, right? So that's just a way of like having just different ways to get on someone's radar. And just remember, if somebody doesn't respond, it's often 99%, it's not about you. And the number one thing actually that people tell me that why they don't reach out to me when they have a question that they think I can help with. The number one reason is I don't want to bother you. Right? But you have to remember that let me decide that if you're bothering me. But actually, I like helping people just like everybody else, right? And I want to support the people who who want to organize and want to fight. In fact, that's my entire main purpose in life. So don't hold back with folks. And I do this too, right? These are lifelong, all this stuff is lifelong stuff. I could get better at each of these pieces. I don't know, some of you are in California, so you may know Malia Cohen. Does anyone give me a thumbs up if you know Malia Cohen? She's the controller of the state of California. So Malia actually and I went to high school together, and she's a pretty good friend of mine. And she gives me advice, actually very good advice. Surprising, I was a little surprised of how good advice, but I always get really great advice for her. So I was like, hey, I'd love to chat with you. And it was the holidays and I was going to be in San Francisco and I was going to say, I'm going to be in town. And then I stopped myself and I was like, it's the holidays. She's going to be with her kid. She's running the finances of the state of California. I made all these excuses for her, right? And then I was like, you know what? Malia can decide whether she wants to talk to me or not, right? So anyway, I caught myself and then I was like, look, I'm going to put it out there. And did we have coffee? No, but at least I gave her the opportunity, to connect if she was willing to, right? But most, especially more experienced people are pretty good with, and most of you actually too, are pretty good with boundaries and you're not going to do something that you don't want to do. All right. So build your personal network. I can't overemphasize that enough. Okay. Next one is make a database. So everybody should have a database. And you should probably have a database of your personal networks. And if you could put in the chat, if you came up with any names of people to network, to have a coffee with, or to do a one-on-one Zoom meeting for a half an hour, put that in the chat if you were able to get any of those. Okay, so in addition to building your personal list, which everybody should always be doing at all levels, but today we're talking about people who can help connect me with employment opportunities. They could be people who have current jobs. We've had a lot of people in this network recruit other people into their organization, and when they got the okay from somebody inside the organization to help them get the job. So again, don't think a connector is only going to be someone who has a ton of experience. Okay, so you have one part of your database. This could be a different tab. If you use Google Sheets, it's pretty easy to do it. But the other tab or the other database should be the jobs that you're applying for. It should include what the job is, what the way to contact them is, or the application process. It should include the deadline, right? How to apply, like many have a portal, some have an email. You can make it your own, the database, but the main thing is just that you're keeping track of everything, right? The other thing I would do in your database, especially if you start researching, which I'm going to get to in a minute, I would put a priority, right? Like You could put a 1 or 2 or 3, like your 1, this is the job that I really want. It's a perfect fit. 2, I'm not so sure. 3, maybe a long shot. I would rank them all 1, 2, and 3 because you don't want to put the same amount of energy into each job. So if it's a 1, then, I would want to practice my interview. I would want to really have a great cover letter that speaks to that particular organization. I would do a much, much better job than like, some that I just like, all right, I'll just put myself out there. The slide that I missed is research. Again, this is going back to like creating your list and creating your database, right? So there's all kinds of job boards out there for social justice jobs. There's Idealist. There's one called Arena. There's one called Gain Power. Now, Arena and Gain Power, they both have like databases, and then they also do trainings. So there are organizations that you can like that can do more, give you more trainings. I would do as many of those as you can. Another one that I've been looking at a lot recently is called unionjobs.com. And that basically has posted union jobs all around the country. And you could look it up by national. You could also look it up by location. So you could be like California or Arizona, and you can just skim through it, see what might be a good fit. Again, even if you don't know a lot about the labor movement yet, one, I would get to know it. It's very important. And talk to other union organizers. And I would consider, even if you don't do it now, union organizing as a place to explore. Now, it also happens to be the most, year-round jobs, and they don't have as much funding issues because they're funded by their members. So they can be more stable and generally have better benefits. But in order to apply for union jobs, a lot of union jobs, they'll look for people who have experience, particularly in electoral organizing, because that can be somewhat transferable. Community organizing as well. And then one other thing on the researching of the jobs, look at the qualifications, but don't undersell yourself, and also realize that some organizations will take, especially if they don't have many people applying, they will take somebody with less experience that is really excited to learn and willing to grow quickly, right? So if the union says we need 5 years of union negotiating experience, and you've never done that, that probably wouldn't apply for that. But don't take yourself out of the running. And if you have a question, you can talk to people about it, whether it's worth applying. You also don't want to waste your time applying for things that you don't have a chance at, right? So you make your database, building your personal lists, building your job lists. And then you prioritize it. You can also prioritize I do this actually. I'm doing a bunch of networking meetings, and some people are the top of my list, and some are 1s, 2s, or 3s, right? So with any list, if it's a small list, it doesn't matter. But the bigger the list that it gets, always prioritize it. Same thing as like union leaders. If you're organizing, you're trying to get 100 tenant volunteers. Well, you want to start with the best people first, and then grow from there, right? Okay. Improve your resume. So I'm going to say a little bit about the resume. One that, a lot of people find resume writing challenging emotionally, and maybe with the writing part and knowing how to format and all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of like formatting and stuff, like YouTube things that you can look at for that part. But it's not easy, right? Because basically you're trying to put your entire work life on one piece of paper, right? And the same thing with a cover letter. You're trying to like introduce yourself, all the complexities, all the great things that you've done, all the background that you have, and you're trying to be concise and it's hard to figure out what's the right thing. And it also, is hard to talk about yourself and hard to, now, privileged white men, generally, there's all kinds of studies about this, have a lot less problem inflating their resumes, writing their resumes, and making the connections and this kind of stuff. So, part of it is class and race and privilege, which is part of why I want to, get these skills out to as many folks as possible. So I just want to focus on a couple of points on your resume, because it's different than applying for Amazon, or like many of you have experience in the service industry or have experience in sales, and applying for a social justice job is different. And when I'm looking at somebody's resume, I'm interested in what they've done that's organizing related, right? So I know I've given a couple of you this feedback. It may be that you have 8 years of experience in the service industry and 1 year of experience organizing, but your resume should really be probably 70% organizing and then 30% the other stuff. Now, the service industry in particular and sales are good to mention because those can be transferable. Like if you're good at sales, then like talking to people, asking people, is something that is transferable to, to organizing. And in fact, sometimes it's easier because now you're not trying to take money out of their wallet. You're trying to give them an opportunity to, fight for their lives, right? All right. So just focus it on social justice. I kind of like resumes that are like, start with a verb that have your, your title, what you did, or sorry, your title, the time period, and then like 3 or 4 points of what you did. And again, a lot of you are underselling what you've done. And so that's something that's just good to have people look at your resume, people who know the work that you've done, and see if they could, help you talk about yourself. All right. Also relevant volunteer experience, you could put on a resume. So, if you have a volunteer thing that you've been doing for 2 or 3 years or whatever, like 6 months or something, but you've been gaining skills doing that, it shows that you're willing to volunteer, first of all, and it shows that you've gained skills in other ways, right? I think volunteer experience is really, really good for organizing because, one of the main things that we need to do as organizers is we need to recruit volunteers, right? And so if you're showing that you have experience putting a lot of time into volunteering in a particular movement, you can put that on your resume. Last thing on the resume I'll say is just that is to get feedback, right? So write it and then get the feedback. Now, if you get feedback, going back to your networking meeting, if somebody gives you feedback, it's important that you act on the feedback. Or you say, I'm not going to do that because I didn't agree with it, or like I decided to go a different direction or what have you. As a leader, as somebody who's trying to connect me to people with jobs, if I say, hey, you're really great, you need to do your resume in these different ways, and then I never hear back from them for weeks and weeks and weeks, then either you got stuck, overwhelmed, anxious, or you disagreed with the feedback anyway. But if like nothing happens, it makes me feel like, well, makes me prioritize less helping you get a job if you're not going to go do the steps to get your resume and your cover letter in order. Okay, cover letter. Okay, again, infuse your cover letter with personality and fire. Now, if you are applying for Amazon, an Amazon HR person, number one is they don't want a shit starter. They don't want somebody who's going to try to start the union. So what they're looking for is obedience, no personality, hard worker. I don't know, just like somebody's not going to start the union. Just think about that, right? So, and all the words that you put in the resume, I work well with others and I mean, there's just the standard shit, but I think in a cover letter, regarding, in a cover letter for a social justice organization, there should be personality in it. And it's actually the opposite of the Amazon cover letter. You want to show that you're a fighter, right? And I think you can talk about what you've done. You could talk about your background and why you fight, how you grew up, what you saw, what you've experienced, how your lived experience makes you want to be an organizer. So those are all really good things to have in a cover letter. More and more people are doing cover letters with just AI. It's fine to use AI to help you. But an AI, I don't think AI can do this part very well. So you want to make it kind of pop and to have your personality. So that's your cover letter, personality, and fire. Get feedback on your resume and cover letter. I know getting feedback, especially on that, is kind of hard, but like there's so many, everybody has done it. Every single person has done at least resumes. And so you can literally get feedback from anybody on this call. You can get feedback from each other. Asking your connectors. So like if I had my list of the connectors, right? Those would be the people that I would ask to look at my cover letter and resume. And whenever I look at somebody's cover letter and resume, it automatically makes me more committed to that person and them getting a job, right? So you're giving people an opportunity to help you and support you. And looking at a resume, looking at a cover letter, I mean, it just takes me like 3 or 4 minutes. So I would send it to people. I would probably do it individually. Like, hey, can you check out my resume and cover letter? I want to, you may ask them, send them a text, and then send it to them. You can also ask people if they would forward it. This is something that I'm starting to do. Because I'm older and I've been in the movement for 25 years. So now like my age group is a lot of leaders of organizations, right? So literally I was in a conversation today with somebody and and he said, this is so interesting. He was like, so many people are coming to me and asking me for, good organizers. And I was like, well, let me know, he's like, well, send me the resumes. And he's like, for him, he's like 10, 15 years older than me. And the people that he knows are like about to retire. Those are not the right, they're looking for people like you. They're not looking for people who are like doing their last few years. So the second part I'm going to talk about is those are the pieces, the main pieces that I would kind of break up. And you can spend, 10 minutes on each of those pieces. Build your list, work on your resume, work on your cover letter. The next few slides are going to be more about how I've seen it be the most helpful, how to do it. What I like to do with this is resumes, it's just like nobody's holding you accountable, or it's just like it's all on your own. There's no goals. And I just feel like having a good accountability buddy, I don't know if you've heard that term before, but like having somebody that knows your goal, or knows what you're trying to do, that can kind of help you. And it's great when it's also somebody else that's doing that. So one idea that you could do is you can get a friend who's also looking for jobs and say like, hey, I'm really procrastinating on my cover letter. Can we please, it'd be really helpful if I had somebody who could, spend 20 minutes with me. In fact, they could be working on something else. I have this friend of mine who does this every now and then, especially when she's very anxious. She wants to just have somebody on the Zoom next, with her, and it kind of helped, and I'd be doing something else. So I don't know, there's something about like just doing this stuff in community. Put on some music, give feedback to each other. The job process, there's ups and downs, and there's normal discouragement that happens. You get rejected from a job that you liked, and then you feel bad about it. And then like having other people to like help you with that, or you help other folks with that. Accountability buddies. I mean, I've used this in the base building for Power Network for all kinds of stuff, including like workout goals. So I don't know. I remember one person that was like, oh, they were gonna write their resume in a week. I was like, okay, so what day is it gonna happen? Because if you don't make a day and you don't make a goal and you're not accountable to somebody else, it makes it much more difficult. So she's like, all right, I'll do it by Friday at 5 o'clock. And then I was like, you know what? I'm also really avoiding exercising. Maybe you make a resume goal, maybe I should make an exercise goal. And then we'll check in with each other on Friday about my exercise goal and your resume goal. What do you think about that? And just making that goal with somebody who's working on something completely different, all of a sudden it was now in my mind, and I actually made my exercise goal rather than it's just, do what you're going to do what you want to do. So those are some ways to work together remotely. Again, utilize the Base Building for Power community to help to do this. I want to talk about the Pomodoro technique. This is how I organize my life. Somebody taught me the Pomodoro technique, and Pomodoro just means tomato in Italian. I don't know why it's tomato, but it's basically a 20-minute chunk, and it could be a 5-minute or a 10-minute, but not like an hour, like 20 minutes or less, or maybe 30 minutes, that you decide, all right, I'm going to work on this task for 20 minutes. And you cannot move off of it. And so if you think about other things you need to do, you can have a piece of paper by you and you can write down the other things. But I organize my whole day in Pomodoros. I'm like, all right, if I'm applying for a job, 20 minutes on my cover letter, 20 minutes on my resume, 20 minutes on building my personal support network, 5 minutes on making my goals. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. And then what you're usually supposed to do is you do 20 minutes and then you do a 5-minute break, and then you do 20 minutes and then a 5-minute break or something like that. I found it very helpful to stay on task. And it also forces me to think at the beginning. I'll do a 10-minute Pomodoro to plan my Pomodoros for the day. So I'll be like, all right, what are my main priorities for the day that I want to get done? And then I'll list them, and then I'll be like, all right, I'll do 20 minutes on this. I'll do 20 minutes on this. I have these 8 meetings, and then I'm going to do it this time. And then, and I'll do it for personal stuff. I'll do personal writing. I like to practice languages. I'll try to do that 10 minutes a day. I play the saxophone. So like I have things in my life that I want to have as a habit. I, schedule it that way. So anyway, making a goal, but having somebody you could be accountable to yourself. That's better than not making a goal, but it's like, all right, I'm going to apply for 3 jobs this week. I'm going to try to identify 10 jobs this week. I'm going to write my resume and cover letter and send it to 3 people, things like that. Volunteer to gain skills and experience. So this can build your resume, but think about what skills do you want to learn, right? Do you want to get better? Do you want to learn to fundraise? Fundraising is a very marketable skill. Fundraising is a good skill to have that can help you have job security. fundraising? Do you want to get better at social media? You can always get better at base building and organizing. So all of these things, you can build your skills doing volunteering. Base Building for Power is a place where you can volunteer. So if anybody came to me and was like, I mean, we have volunteers do a bunch of different things, but if anybody came to me and was like, I really want to build my fundraising skills, can you train me and can I volunteer for base building? We would figure out something that would help base building, but just as importantly, build, which is part of our program, build your skills so that you can, get a job. All right. So volunteering's good. Also, the thing I'll say about volunteering is that no movement has been built by paid staff. No successful movement anyway. So every single movement in the history of the world, volunteer organizers and people who did a ton of volunteer work have been at the forefront. Of course, there's been paid folks too, but it's always like the successful ones, because paid people can't do it all, right? We need to build a movement. Second to last thing I'll say is consider salting. Some of you may not know this term, but basically, salting is where you get a job with the purpose of organizing a union. So, this is something that you can consider and also build your skills while you're still applying for other things. But you could go get a job in an Amazon and like start talking to people about the union. Now, if you're interested in salting, the best thing is to be with a union that actually has a program that supports people who are salting. Because if you just go into some random place and you get people fired up about the union, then people get fired, and then the organization isn't connected. That's a problem. But there are organizations like Unite Here and like UFCW that have SALT programs. And basically you get paid by the job, but then I really wish I salted. I never got the chance to, but that's also an organizing opportunity. All right. The last thing, don't give up. This is not easy, but timing's everything, right? So you just got to keep it going. If they don't select you, it's not about you, it's about them. You all are amazing. And so, and it's hard to put all of our amazingness on a freaking piece of paper and a resume, but a no is not a no forever. This is just something we all gotta, what do we do when we feel dejected and we feel like, it's not going well and we want to give up? What works for us? And as you organize more, you'll get more tools. Is there a friend that talks you off the cliff that you talk to every time you want to give up? Or do you join a meeting? Usually isolation is not the best thing. So usually it's like reaching out to somebody that knows and supports you. And I talked to all kinds of people who like forgot their magic or forgot their abilities. And I've done that too. It's very normal, but you gotta like catch yourself and then reach out and then figure out what are the things that work best for you.